My entire world has been corrupted and transformed forever. What I thought I knew is a joke. Growing up in a super religious family, I had always been taught about God, angels, the devil, and just about every other theological aspect of life. Being a rebellious teenage girl, however, I chose to spend my teenage years doing everything I possibly could to get away from that lifestyle. I am an atheist, or at least I was until last year. Let me be clear, I didn't change my entire outlook on life to suddenly follow my family's religious beliefs. I discovered something more terrifying than the thought of going to hell for doing this or that. I've discovered that hell may in fact be Earth. Let me go back and fill in the context for what I discovered last year. I had just started babysitting for this family in order to earn some extra cash. I had no interest in staying at home with my freak show family of wannabe televangelists and altar boys, so I wanted to make sure I always had something to do, whether it was hanging out with my girls at the mall or chilling by myself at a movie. I wanted to make sure I was financially able to go out and have fun. So the first couple of nights were cool. The kid was about 12 years old, I was 17 at the time, and he was pretty chill for his age. We hung out, ate some junk food, and played video games until his bedtime. The parents paid me $18 an hour while they went out and did their thing from 7 p.m. until 1 a.m. every Friday and Saturday. It was a pretty sweet gig. I just got paid to hang out with some kid for the first 2 hours and relax for the next 4. One night, shit got weird. I had put the kid to bed at 9 p.m. as usual, and was just laying on the couch, trolling Twitter. Suddenly, I started to hear what sounded like dragging coming from upstairs. The fuck? I whispered to myself, putting my phone away. I got up and started walking up the stairs to investigate. Ben? I called up as I got higher and higher. You out of bed? I got to the top of the stairs and made my way to his bedroom, slowly opening his door. I peeked inside and saw that he was fast asleep in his bed. I walked up to him to see if he was pretending, until I noticed the pool of drool soaking his pillow. Yeah, he was definitely out. I covered his exposed chest and made my way out of the bedroom. I stood there for a moment in confusion, until I decided I must have been hearing things. I shrugged and started walking toward the stairs until I heard it again. The sound of something dragging was a lot louder this time, and I realized it was coming from up above the floor I was on. I walked around until I noticed a string dangling from the ceiling, revealing the entrance to the attic. I took a moment, trying to decide what my next step was. Was it some kind of animal? Did someone break in? Were they keeping an evil twin brother to Ben chained up, feeding him fish heads every day? I needed to call the parents and ask them about it. After about 3 rings, the mother answered.
Jen, is everything all right?
She answered. Yeah, Mrs. Fern, I replied. I was just wondering if you knew what was going on up in the attic. I keep hearing the sound like something dragging up there.
Oh, don't worry about that,
she said, sounding relieved.
We've recently been experiencing a pest problem. Rats, bats, and other various rodents. Don't worry though, they're quite contained up there.
Oh, okay, I replied, not really convinced. Thanks.
Is there anything else? How's Ben behaving for you?
Oh, he's been great. He's fast asleep right now.
Wonderful. Well, if there's anything else you need, be sure to call me again, okay?
No problem, Mrs. Fern.
Bye-bye now.
Bye. No sooner than I hung up the phone did I start to hear the dragging again. It sounded way too heavy to be rodents, but I figured it's none of my business. So I headed back downstairs. Despite having to listen to the dragging, the rest of the night went as usual. The parents came home at about 1 a.m., paid me, and I was on my way home. That was Friday night. It was Saturday that everything changed for me. It was a night that I will never forget, no matter how much I want to. Things went about the same as they did the night before. Ben was super chill. We hung out until his bedtime, and I laid on the couch on my phone. About the same time as the previous night, I started to hear the dragging. Shit, this again, I said to myself. I was tempted to put in my earbuds, but figured that might be a bad idea in case Ben needed me or something. The dragging would not stop. It went on and on and on, and I could swear it was getting louder. Eventually, I'd had enough. I was by no means scared of rodents, and if it really was a pest problem like Mrs. Fern said it was, then I could take care of it for them, or at least the ones I could find. I grabbed a broom, ready to smash some vermin, and headed upstairs. I checked on Ben to make sure he was still asleep, which he was, and closed the door as I exited the room. I then walked over to the attic and pulled on the string, releasing the ladder and making my way up. When I got up there, I turned on my flashlight app and looked around. I didn't see any rodents, no bats, rats, or anything else I would have been expecting. What I did find, however, almost made me shriek out loud. It was a gargoyle. The expression on its face was horribly twisted and terrifying. It had a long tongue that reached all the way to the floor, and large fangs that filled its wide scowl. It stood on two stubby legs, but kept itself propped up with two long, muscular-looking arms, its long claws planted firmly into the floor. I shook in nervousness and fear as I shone my flashlight at its horrible-looking face. Slowly, I motioned the beam and focused on its hands, and then the floor around it. My heart began to race as I noticed scratch marks along the floor, ending where its claws rested. Trying my best to hold in a whimper, I slowly, but as quickly as I could, began to back away, minding the footing as to not fall out of the entrance. I felt where it was and began to decline. I looked down to correct my footing and suddenly heard fast, loud dragging that stopped right in front of me. I knew what I was going to see before I even looked up. I began trembling as I slowly turned my head to face the stone, demon-looking monster. Even though I knew exactly what I was going to see, that didn't stop me from screaming right in its face. I lost my grip and fell down to the floor. Struggling, I ran to Ben's room and frantically woke him up. Ben, wake up! We gotta get out of here!" I screamed. He shot up in shock, completely confused as to what was happening. I dragged him out of bed and ran out of his room, where there stood the gargoyle. The evil scowl now shifted into an even more evil smile. I screamed in horror as Ben just stared at it, and then at me. "What's going on?" he asked, seemingly oblivious to the stone monstrosity before us. I didn't have time to answer his questions, though, as I dragged him and ran past it. "Wait!" he yelled out, but I wasn't trying to hear it. We needed to get out of there now. We got to the stairs when I felt a hard fist hit me right in the back. I lost my grip with Ben as I went crashing down the stairs. As I tumbled to the bottom, aching all over, I looked up the stairs to see Ben standing with that thing, holding its hand. "What did you do?" he asked, looking somewhat angry. "Ben," I called out to him, "get away from that thing." "No," he replied, visibly gripping the gargoyle's hand tighter. I then noticed the creature's smile had left its face as it stared blankly at me. I could faintly see that its eyes were not stone like the rest of it. They were black and had a glint of life in them. The pupils were faint, but I could barely make them out to be tiny red dots that began to dilate as I stared into them. "Ben?" I began, growing confused at the situation. "What's going on?" "You weren't supposed to go upstairs, Jen," he yelled at me, as if he were a parent scolding a misbehaved child. "Do you have any idea how long it took for my parents to get him up there? Do you know how heavy and stubborn he is? I stood there, speechless, trying to wrap my head around everything Ben was saying to me. He knew what this thing was. They all did. They had locked him up there, and I had set him free. Oh shit, I said out loud. Oh shit is right, said Ben. You'd better call my parents so they can fix your mess. Oh man, they are not going to be happy about this. Not knowing what other options I had, I did just that. I called up Mrs. Fern, explained what was happening. She was not happy. They arrived home after about 20 minutes, and they let me have it. Do you have any idea what you've done? She scolded. I told you to not worry about it. It was none of your business. Now you've gone and set him free. Do you have any idea how hard it was to get him up there the first time? Do you have any idea how heavy he is? I had no words. I had no answers. I had no idea what was real or fantasy anymore. You know what? Don't bother. You're fired. Take your money and please get out of my house. She then shoved my money into my chest and pointed towards the door. No words to speak, I looked over at Ben, who was still holding hands with the gargoyle, which was now downstairs with us, that evil smile back on its face. I left the house and never spoke about what happened. Now, my whole existence has been thrown into question. Everything I've ever been taught, everything I've ever believed and not believed is completely distorted. Living gargoyles? What else is out there? As I said, I never spoke a word about this to anyone, and had planned on keeping it to myself for the rest of my life. That was until last night, right before I went to bed. I went to close my bedroom window and noticed it. The gargoyle. It was perched on the roof right outside my window, staring with that wicked smile.